Hey everyone, welcome to Real Estate News Unpacked. I'm your co-host Marcel, your mortgage specialist, alongside Ron, your multiplex design specialist, and we are here to bring you the news headlines this week. Lots going on. Ron, it was great seeing you this week at the Future Build session. Um,
Same here, my friend. It was good seeing you. Nice job moderating that session. It was
I
such
was
a
really trying to pull the information out of you
oh
guys,
boy,
right?
well, you certainly
What who
did
you
that.
need on your team, who you need on your team from design versus architect, so BCN versus architect, contractors, engineers, structural. We went through the whole thing.
Yeah,
It was a great session,
that was
some
really
good
good.
information, good tidbits. We will get that information out to you guys in some way shortly. But today, let's dive into a few things.
Let's
We've
unpack
got
some.
some
Let's unpack some stuff. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, we've got some mortgage news to cover. Bank of Canada rate cut coming up in potential rate cut coming up June 4th.
Hey,
Um, Still seeing some delinquencies this side on the credit. Last time we talked about the mortgage delinquencies. These are the non-mortgage delinquencies that we're starting to see.
sure,
So we're going to talk
sure.
about that. And then the disparity amongst the different levels of government. This is consistent. Ron, I know you're going to unpack that.
Yeah,
What's
talk a
going
little bit
on?
about that. Yeah, for sure. I mean, definitely there's some disparity, there's some disagreement, and one level of government is trying to outshine the other. So let's see who's going to win in this battle, right?
Constantly. Why can't they all just get along? We're
Why
in a
can't we get
crisis.
along?
We're in a crisis, supposedly.
True.
And last but not least,
Yeah.
the multiplex madness in
Oh,
the missing middle. We've got some interesting articles to
oh.
look at.
I really like those
Let's
M's. Missing middle madness and
Missing middle
multiplex.
madness. Yeah. So the first thing we're going to talk about, the Bank of Canada interest rates. The next meeting is on June 4th. It looks as though the rates will remain. We've highlighted here the key thing to watch from the Bank of Canada next week is whether the bank is willing to support the weakening labor market despite recent above target core inflation prints. So it looks like once again, we'll see something probably. I agree. I think we're going to see. I think we're not out of the uncertainty just yet.
I'm not out of
And
the
I think
woods
it'll
yet.
be too soon for them to cut.
Hmm.
So I think we'll see that kind of steadied from that perspective. On to the Ontario mortgages and the delinquency. So this is interesting. So last week we spoke about the delinquencies according to Equifax and what was happening there. This week, this is interesting. This is all about now consumer credit and starting to see lower levels of that are starting to pop up. So there's a drop in credit card spending, um, and with that drop, so people are kind of tightening their belts, um, and an increase in delinquencies. So
My question to about this, Marcel, and get your thoughts here. Is this as a result of the tariff wars that is essentially ensuing right now? That people are basically spending less? Or is this a
yeah,
real structural, issue where it is people just cannot afford things and they're in debt? That's why they're spending less credit. Like, what is it?
Yeah, I would say this spike is as a result of the uncertainty that's been created in the political market, i.e., primarily the tariffs. I think we can all speak just as human beings. We all kind of know that we're a little unsure with what's happening, and like you kind of look at things with a second look, right? Like, do you actually need the thing? Um, I know personally in my business, I've been cleaning up a lot of my subscriptions. I've got all these subscriptions to different things that I'm trying and kind of just like a lot of things like I don't even use, right? So I started to cut stuff. But like, different people will feel it, depending on where you're at. will feel it in different ways. So I think this is as a result of the uncertainty in the market. Um, and I think once we get to like a new normal, um, this should fix itself, provided we're not in this scenario too long. So provided this doesn't get
Well,
extended too extended.
I'm looking at some of your notes here. You know, you shared some of your notes with me, and I thought to myself, like, this is really interesting because, you know, young people are affected mostly. And I guess it goes without saying that newcomers to Canada is also impacted, right?
Yeah.
More severely than established Canadians, let's say. Right. And I can see how this is only going to proliferate throughout this crisis if this prolongs. So, but with that said, I mean, some side news was that the tariff wars was essentially kind of softened or dampened a little bit yesterday by a court ruling that Trump had to stop. So, do you
Yes.
think this is going to have an impact? Maybe we'll see spending go back. Maybe investors are going to come back flooding into the markets. Like,
Remember, there's this kind of unspoken 90-day rule with Trump, right? So you kind of got to let it
uh,
sit for 90 days.
90
let's
days.
let's see
That
what
sounds like a
happens.
debt payment. You got 90 days to pay up, right?
Let's see what happens. Yeah, that's interesting. What's going on there? Definitely let's see what happens in the pursuing months. I think the main thing is everyone needs a soft landing right now, and I think that's kind of what we're looking to see. But Ron, why don't you jump into what's going on between the levels of government and affordability? I know you've got some interesting stuff to share with that.
Sure, sure. Okay, yeah, Marcel. So you're absolutely right. So I saw this article and I thought it is really interesting that we share this. It's important that we share this. So it reads: Ford government scrapped Toronto affordable housing requirement after pushback from three REITs, Real Estate Investment Trust. And I thought this is interesting, and it has less to do about the REITs. I know REITs more like financialized type organizations. They got the money to back the construction of large projects, and hence the reason why they can lobby the government. But I think more importantly here, I think is the disparity, which you kind of touched on. The disparity between provincial government and municipal government. So municipal government needs this affordable housing. They have different priorities here, right? You can
Yes.
see how Toronto want to have more affordable housing, and in fact, all municipalities throughout Ontario. Whereas I think provincially, the governmental system is saying like, look, we just need housing to be built, and if we're essentially asking developers to and make sure they mandate or make sure they include these affordable housing in there, then we end up in a situation where it is people aren't going to build because the developers aren't going to find these jobs penciling or profiting enough, right?
Yes.
So here's where I think like, you know, in solving one crisis, we may end up with another crisis,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, we're stuck between a rock and a hard place here. The province is saying just build, and the city is saying, yeah, but we need these affordable units, right? We can't just we can't just go and build. Like we got to build these things, right? So, um, yeah, I think this is the why can't we all just get along phrase here
Yeah.
between the different governments, and why this quote unquote crisis has been prolonged so long. Like it's just ongoing. Um and it doesn't really have a clear line of sight as to whether or not we're gonna get out. Um
I would
but
also add this as well. I think I might have shared this document with you. If I haven't, I'll share it with you. It was a study, a report that came out from Ottawa. There is this initiative. It's called Missing Middle Initiative that actually produced this report, and I thought it was really interesting because they were essentially grading, like we're back in school. They were grading all levels of government, and they were saying basically, here's the grade that municipal government get for providing affordable housing in general, where they're at in meeting their targets. Here's where provincial governments are, and here where federal governments are. And I gotta say, the big brother, being federal government, is kicking some butt, right? Like as far as their policies and programs go, what they're implementing is actually considered to be very, very robust, and they're basically outstripping what it is the other levels of government is doing. And in fact,
Right.
municipal government right now is getting a D grade, right? They're not
Interesting. Interesting.
they're not getting a good grade in terms of the policy. So yeah, that's really interesting,
I,
and
I think that would be really good to put like side by each run, and
yeah.
maybe we can unpack that for the viewers in another session.
Yeah, yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
that's
Well,
super
we'll
interesting.
definitely do that. I like that idea. Now, again, we can go on and on about this, but certainly a great topic to keep your eyes on, because all of this is why it is we're seeing these Bill 17 policies sort of come true, because provincially, you know, the provincial government want to do more so they can improve their grade, right? That's what
Yeah.
it boils down to.
Yeah.
Cool.
So, the Midtown Multiplex madness. Let's talk about this, Ron. I saw this, and basically, this is like the Yonge and Lawrence area, so a pretty prestigious neighborhood in Toronto. And you've got this developer that's come in and said that. So this is the context. This is the from the streetscape. This is kind of what you would see in this neighborhood. This type of housing. And Ron, shortly you're going to show us what this developer is proposing. But not only is he proposing a fourplex, which is as of right for the most part, well, as of right in Toronto, um, but he's proposing this fourplex as a condo. So he's going to strata each of the units, and you're going to be able to buy them at $2 million. That's the headline here, right? $2 million per unit. Two big M's. So my question here, Ron, is this developer solving the missing middle with this product? And not to get judgy on his product, but let's get judgy. Show us what the proposed design looks like, Ron.
Yeah, I actually took some time to review what was actually submitted. So I think maybe first I should say this was actually taken to the C of A. For those who don't know,
What is the C of A?
yeah, C of A is actually the Committee of Adjustment. Is the dreaded quasi-judicial system that actually determines whether your request for variance from the established or effective standards would be allowed or granted. And in this case, it simply wasn't. And I think the big kind of concern here was coming from, look, there was like 90 objection letters.
90.
90.
Wow.
Right, so okay, maybe that's an overstatement, because I actually took the time to go in and look at the Committee of Adjustment hearing. Look, this was actually really long. It was big, and the hearing, like generally speaking, a hearing takes like about 15 minutes. This actually took like an hour and maybe 40 minutes, right?
Okay.
Hour and 20 minutes, 40 minutes, just
And
to,
what
for them
and
to
what were
flesh
some of
out.
the objections?
Well, the objections were very clear that the height, they didn't like the height. I'm just gonna keep it simple here, but we can unpack this in a more detailed conversation, no, Marcel. But it was about the height of the property. The one of the things was like the fact that it's gonna encroach on the privacy. No one really talked much about shadow studies and wind studies and stuff. It is a pretty. It seems like it's well designed, but it seems out of scale given the context of the neighborhood.
I feel like that's probably the main issue here. So height, side yard setbacks, rear setback, like all those kinds of things. Like, I'm sure they're gonna push the envelope, but those can be pulled back to where they need to be. But I feel like the context might have been a big issue here, and the fact that it's gonna be a condo. Um, what's your thoughts there? That was the thing that struck me initially when
Yeah,
I saw it, right?
yeah,
Like,
yeah. And I feel like I want to address that. I mean, look, the building is a very modern looking building. Great job on the architect's part. I think they did a fantastic job developing that building. Apparently, it does fit into the context based on their argument that there are some other modern looking structures along that street as well.
okay.
But the whole idea here is that this thing is going to be condorized and sold for $2 million a pop, right? Like, two big M's. Now, with that said, is like how are we justifying that this is affordable, right? Like I think that's the
Well,
big question.
I don't even know if we are saying this is affordable. I think this, in this case,
Hmm.
um, this individual is looking to sell these, and his argument is this is a entry level price point for the neighborhood, and
Hmm.
now you can get in for, or maybe slightly below the neighborhood. Now you can get in for to the
Yeah.
neighborhood.
Well,
So this is not an affordability play.
yeah, yeah.
This is a, hey, now you can get into this fancy neighborhood with this product.
Well, I guess.
I I don't know if that's
Hmm.
correct from a market
Hmm.
perspective.
Hmm. Hmm.
I mean, good luck to him. I certainly wouldn't be building something like this and trying to do sell condos at $2 million
Well, look,
in
I
this
mean,
neighborhood.
in the community that it's in, it's probably considered affordable for most people that Torontonians. That's not really affordable. But I think here, um, there was a lot of objections, and this is something that I think every designer needs to be really conscious of. Is like whether the product that they're bringing to the market does fit the bill, what the city's asking for, and to that point, the city is asking for affordable housing, right? That's what it should be. Now, that's the whole idea of this being resold and so forth doesn't really fit that, because when you think about affordable, you're thinking about rents, right? 30% of someone's medium
Yeah,
income
but
and so.
me building a fourplex or a 4+1, I'm not solving affordability, Ron. That's not an affordable product, right? My rents are going to be market rent. That's the only way that'll be able to pencil that project, right? There's just not enough units to make them affordable, right? So I think the whole missing middle debate um, is more about getting supply, right? Getting more supply into the market versus affordability. Affordability, and I have this, and we can take this, probably to another session. But affordability only works at a certain scale, and if you have the subsidized backing
The backing support.
from the government, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
So that's where nonprofits come in. So I think we really need to keep a clear line between creating supply and affordability.
Well, again, that's a great comment. I'll leave it at that. I'll give you the upper hand on that one there for sure. Because I do agree with you. Like, it has to fit the context, but it also needs to fit the market, and a 1,500 by the way, each level on this 1,500 square feet, right? Like of space. This is going to be quite luxurious.
1,500 for 2 million. Wow. Okay. All right. I'm sure there's amenities and all that stuff as well.
Oh
Is
yeah,
there
there's
tennis
rooftop
court?
amenities. Well, tennis court, I don't know. Maybe that's going to be planned for the future in the
Is there a
backyard.
pool? Is there a pool?
There's a spa. There's a spa.
There's a
There's
spa.
there's a
Okay.
there's a
All right.
elevated parking. I think that was removed eventually. But
Okay.
I think maybe what I'll say here, two things. One is that this was turned down or declined. It was basically like sent back into the face of the designer and owner, like, this we're not accepting based on all the objections. And but I do want to say this, Marcel, while the objections seem to have very subjective merits, objectively this property fits the box,
Right.
right? It fits the
Right.
box that the city has, the box that the city have basically asked people to put these buildings into, with some minor variances. That's why they went to committee. Now, I guess the big question is, if we're getting this sort of challenge with 4 units, what's going to happen when we get 6 units approved, which is going to happen next month? Or
Well,
6 units, I shouldn't
well,
say approved. Let me step back here, right?
right. So next month the plans are going back to city council, right? Towards the end of June,
Well, to
right?
give a bit more context here, these plans aren't going back. I'm just talking in the future. Someone else is, going to be making an application for a multiplex, provided this bylaw gets approved by council in June. They would be able to do 6 units. And this is one of the concerns. A lot of people do not want sort of rental units or multiple units in there, where, like, kind of replacing a single family, right?
Sure.
A
Yeah.
lot of time that's kind of one of the arguments, right?
Right.
So
So you're saying if this four is an issue,
yeah.
wait until they get a load of six.
Exactly.
Right.
So,
Okay.
and this is coming. So, we're gonna certainly unpack this a bit more in our future recordings, my friend. But with that said, I'm looking forward to hearing what it is City Council is going to say about six plexes in the very near future
Yeah, let's
throughout
definitely talk about
Toronto.
that. Yeah, let's definitely talk about that. Ron, why don't you sign us off today? That was great conversation. I think we've covered a lot. Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you very much, guys, for joining us here on Unpacked, where we take news articles in real estate and try to break it down in a very simplistic and understanding way. If you guys like the content, hit this like button, hit the subscribe button so you can be notified when we're launching new videos. And we'll see you guys next time.
See ya.